I'm exhausted, having spent 2 weeks on the road to set up a new international office in London, plus the travel has left me exhausted. I hate being away from my daughter and wife, I always have, but the lifestyle I've created for my family makes my job challenging. The last 5 years have been difficult but productive at the same time, and I can finally relax and enjoy the success as I have hired a new president to run the operations of the company while I remain the CEO and owner. I'm excited to get back to my normal life as I will have more time to spend with my family and friends. Don't get me wrong, I love the growth of the company, but deep down, my goal has always been to spend most of my time watching my daughters grow up and spending more time with my wife. My life may have been stressful, but it was always filled with love and warmth, and I wouldn't change a thing, and now I'm looking forward to starting the next chapter of my life with my family, just 30 minutes from home. I sat in the back seat of the limo relaxing and enjoying my second glass of bourbon, which I had poured from the minibar next to me after leaving the airport. The house seemed quiet as we pulled into the circular driveway, but I knew from experience that in a few minutes my daughters would be swooping down on their dad and their mom would greet me with a passionate kiss and the promise of a wonderful night with Dread in her arms. A wonderful evening. I hoped all was well, and then I saw an envelope with my name in her beautiful handwriting: to Jonathan, from your beloved wife. My dearest Jonathan, what an incredible journey we have been on as husband and wife. I have cherished every minute of the last 16 years and eagerly look forward to the next, dear. You know how much I love you. You are my whole world. You are my life, and I can't live without you. The love you give me is all I have, and I long to be in your arms every day. I am writing this letter for several reasons. First and foremost, my dear, I want to thank you for these wonderful 16 years of my life, for being a wonderful father to my children, for the wonderful way of life that you have allowed us to experience, and most of all for the love that you have always poured into me. What I'm about to tell you is the hardest thing I've ever done, and no matter how much I love you, I will never stop loving you. For the past 6 months I have felt nothing for this man, and I don't love him, but we have been very close to each other, and the reason I'm telling you now is out of respect and a deep sense of guilt. But I have no love for him, it's just an attraction. I can't explain what he did to me, I can't put it into words. I can't stop myself no matter how hard I try, and he's become an addiction to me. I need him in my life. Please believe me, I've done everything in my power to keep this a secret and not let it affect our lives. Nothing has changed between us since the beginning, but I know it's not going to end anytime soon, so I hope it's only fair that you understand all of this and don't keep any secrets. I won't let being with him affect our love and intimacy. I just want you to know that another part of me has been given to someone else, but this part of me has nothing to do with my love for you. I'm staying with my friends tonight because I want to give you some alone time. Read my letter and think about where to go from here. I'll be home around 10 p.m. We can pick up where we left off as if nothing has changed, because nothing has changed. My dear, when you read this letter, remember that you are the love of my life, and I am yours until death do us part. One, I'm yours, my dear, and I will give you everything you want or need. Thank you for being you, for being the best husband a girl could ever dream of. Loving you always and forever, your devoted wife, Swa. I picked up a piece of paper and wrote a letter in reply to the letter, sealing the envelope sealed, with her name clearly written on it, and placed it on the table next to the letter addressed to me. I put her letter in my pocket, packed some bags, and then went to my daughter's room to pack clothes for a couple of days, as we had a short trip ahead of us. I had a company apartment next to my office in California, where I kept a full set of clothes and everything I would need for an extended stay. When I arrived at my parents' house, my daughters ran to greet me with big smiles on their faces and kissed me 100 times. They were so happy to see me. Mom said you won't be back until tomorrow. She is meeting her friend Jamie tonight, and we are visiting Grandma and Grandpa. I promised them a fun and exciting vacation. Convincing the girls was the easy part. Explaining it to Mom and Dad was a whole other story. As we boarded the plane, the girls ran up and down the aisle of the 16-seat plane playing with the stewardesses. The girls loved it. Jessica, that's when I dialed Zoe's home number to talk to her. Jonathan, where are you, dear Sue? Listen to me carefully and don't interrupt me, because at this altitude I might lose the signal. I know you've read my letter and you know that my daughters are with me. They will call you in the morning. I took my daughters to the limousine that was waiting for me. In a while we arrived at my house. I talked to them, I kissed them, I fell asleep after 10 minutes. I didn't even pack my bags. I'll do it tomorrow when I have time. Mom has betrayed you, Dad. My heart broke when I heard her words. I fought back the tears and just shook my head and told them to get dressed and go to dinner. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but I knew that with love and support they would be able to cope with the challenges ahead. I've known George for 20 years and we've been through a lot together, so I told him what was going on and what I wanted to happen, and George didn't beat around the bush. I want custody of my children, no matter what it takes. I don't want to reconcile, I don't want therapy or forgiveness, I want this over as soon as possible. Kate, I always thought you guys were the perfect couple. I don't understand how she could do this, but I understand what you're asking for. Do you remember when you and Roger started the company? If you did have an affair, you could have given up your rights to your children and any financial benefits from the marriage. Over the years, as your company grew, I established a prenuptial relationship with your corporate attorney and transferred most of your assets into a trust of which you were a beneficiary. This means that if you break the marriage contract, you can only leave the marriage with what you brought into it and lose any rights to the children. I know that's not what we're doing this for, but it looks like it's all going to work out in your favor, George. You're right, I never in a million years would have thought that she'd cheat on me. I'd completely forgotten about the prenup. But, George, all I have is a letter admitting that she's been unfaithful. What else do we need? I'm asking you, a videotaped or taped confession from her would be helpful, and some photos or a confession from her lover George. Can you take care of this while I'm in California with the kids? The money doesn't matter, I want to gather the evidence as soon as possible and I don't want this to drag on. There's a girl by the name of Jamie. All I know is that Jamie is the tennis instructor at the country club and they've got a tracking device on Sway's car and recording devices in it and cameras in our house, and they've got a camera in our house, and they've got a camera in our house, and a camera in our house, and they've got a camera in our house, recording devices, cameras in our home, and that all evidence obtained through these devices was legal because my company controlled them through a trust, and I never saw or heard any of the evidence because I didn't want the images to haunt me for the rest of my life. Of course, Jimmy proved to be a womanizer and had to leave his last 2 jobs because he was sleeping with other married women. 5 days after our initial conversation, George called me to update me on the progress of the investigation. Jonathan, we have all the necessary evidence. What do you want us to do? Do you still intend to divorce Zoe without hesitation? George asked you, are you sure you want to divorce her? Jonathan, as we speak, are you sure you want to divorce her? I love this woman with all my heart, and I can't stop loving her, and I hate her for what she's done to us, me and the kids, and I will never be able to forgive, no matter what you decide. 0 a.m. I told the girls that when their mom gets back from tennis practice, I want them to stay in their rooms until their mom and I have sorted things out. I could tell they were upset and worried, and I did my best to reassure them that everything was going to be okay. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized and Zoe was still the mother of my 2 daughters. I knew I didn't have to give her anything, but I needed my kids to be able to see their mom whenever they wanted. Yes, the Lamborghinis and the lavish life were a thing of the past. She gave it all up for some loser tennis player she would never see again, and being a decent guy like me, I even got her a job at the country club. Yes, the country club was more than willing to help. As soon as I dropped the lawsuit, they agreed to part ways with Jamie and help Zoe get employed. Zoe is no longer a member of the country club, but she's now a hostess at the club to help her make ends meet because she has no experience or training for any other job, and her only other option is to waitress at the club. The girls told me their mom cries every night because she sacrificed her love and way of life for her own selfish desires. After all this, she realized what she had done and how foolish she was to think her husband would accept her selfish desires. She told me that she finally realized what she had done and begged me to forgive her for what she had done. Jonathan, I know that we will never be together again and that you will never trust me again, but I want to apologize and ask you to forgive me. Now I know what I did and what I put you through, and I'm so sorry. If there was a way to undo this, I would do it in a heartbeat. Losing you is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. I miss you and I love you so much, and I'm devastated. I've mellowed out in the last year, and when I look back I can't believe how stupid I was to give it all up for my selfish and self-serving attitude. Her confession was sincere, and I know with time maybe I can forgive her. I will never stop loving her. She is my life. I have loved her for so many years. That love cannot die overnight. A month later, the local newspaper reported a crocodile attack on a golf course over the weekend. The photos showed the crocodile's hands were up to 5 meters long. Poor Jamie must have gone for a run on a lake and accidentally got the crocodile's grip. Story 2. Just before my wife and I got married, she threw a crazy bachelorette party that probably involved some things I didn't want to know. As we were dating and getting to know each other, she told me that getting older was serious business and that she didn't want to continue on the path she was on in her life. Instead, she wanted to settle down with a responsible man who would make her feel loved and happy. She looked at the credit card debt she had incurred and realized that it was a stark contrast to our lives and decided to change her lifestyle. I saw her mature and make wiser choices over the course of our time together, which led me to believe that she was a genuine person who was charming, genuine, and getting smarter because of me. I felt at the time that I had met my soul mate and didn't need to be afraid of commitment. My wife was ready to take her vows with me and start our life together, so we got married in the summer of 2019. 3 years and 12 months later, I was watching a show on my phone while she was in the bathroom. It was a normal Saturday for us, and my wife was getting ready to go out with her friends about 4 to 6 times a month. We had a strong bond that made me feel like she was a loyal, mature, respectable woman and that I had been completely wronged. My cell phone was dead, so I plugged it in and picked up my wife's cell phone to continue watching programs. I read some of them and realized they were in response to a recent post she made about her needing help paying off her credit card debt. I continued to read the messages and realized that she had been seeing someone else on a regular basis. I threw my phone across the room and just laid there processing and thinking about what I had just read. I felt like I was turning into a shell of a person, and before my wife came out of the bathroom I could have tried anything to fill the void. I realized I needed to save screenshots of these messages to prove that she was at least still talking to other men like this, because my credit was much better and I had bought the marital home entirely on my own. I took 2 screenshots and sent them to myself and then put her phone back where it belonged. She came into the room and asked me if I was okay. I could tell she was nervous about me seeing her phone. I said I was fine and that I had to catch her meeting up with another guy to get proof to help my brain accept that this was real, and if it was real it was much worse than if she was drinking with her irresponsible friends. They got into his car without ordering anything and we followed them into a large neighborhood and circled around to avoid being seen until we saw them go into a house where the curtains weren't completely closed, so we saw them across the street as they went into the living room and started making out and then collapsed on the couch, and I got a little closer to take a picture when my heart was thumping and my hands shaking, and then I crouched and walked back to the car and my friend drove me home, and on the way we discussed the disturbing reality of what was happening. My wife was cheating on me with multiple men for money, and he started spreading rumors through his cell phone to her friends, and through them it spread until it reached my wife's closest people, who all greeted her with insults and slanders, told her she was cut off and that they wouldn't stand for her horrible and degrading behavior, and even her family members such as her twin cousins expressed their disbelief and disappointment. My last memory of her is of her crying her eyes out after being admonished by the judge about honor and loyalty. I am sorry that your wife proved to be a very inconsiderate woman. If she really cared about you or loved you, she would consider your feelings and the life consequences of her actions. A truly worthy spouse will do everything in their power to love and respect their loved ones, no matter what they do. You did the right thing by exposing your wife for what she really is, obtaining evidence, and insisting on a divorce, no matter what they say or do, and never let a liar convince you again that they are worthy of your love. I wish you the best of luck in a life full of love. Thank you for sharing your story. My wife and I have been together for 10 years and have 2 sons under the age of 6. My wife was very close to her aging mother, and even though she lived in a nursing home, we visited her once a week and brought her sons toys to show her, and before long my wife was encouraging her sons to make gifts for their teachers and the school bus driver with the help of their grandmother. One-on-one as time went on, she started seeing her mom twice a week by herself, and then again with us every other Sunday, which was a lot, but even then, her mom would often say she missed us. My son wanted to watch a program, so I grabbed my wife's cell phone off the charger and noticed several missed calls from my son's school bus driver. They were both home safe and sound, so I couldn't imagine why there were so many missed calls from him. I hung up as soon as I heard this. I went upstairs to my wife, who was getting ready. She looked gorgeous. You could tell she was going on a special date. As soon as she saw me, she started making light of how beautiful she looked and explained that her mom wanted her to take pride in her appearance no matter what the occasion. I played the recording of the bus driver, and her perfume bottle fell out of her hand and shattered into pieces on the floor. She immediately became desperate and begged me to wait a little longer and listen to her, but I grabbed my car keys on my way out with the kids. I told him I knew what had happened and that he needed to come get my wife because she belonged to him now. He quickly told me to take it easy, that he was married and he didn't want to get involved in any trouble. Just before I left, I heard her leave a voicemail telling him he needed to come pick her up and find her a place to stay because it was all his fault. I think she kept calling him late into the night until she found his wife on social media and publicly begged her to have him call her because she desperately needed to talk to him. I had no idea about this at all, let alone for so long. I feel like an idiot for not investigating my wife's whereabouts earlier, but I really don't believe she was with her mom. She was indeed with her mom, but only rarely. He tried vainly to prove his loyalty to his wife in the hope that things would return to normal, but neither of us did. My wife is mortified that her lover gave up on her at the first sign of trouble, and that her attempts to get him to help her have torn his family apart and made things worse for herself. Her desperate affair has cost her her reputation, her confidence, and her family. She is not the same person she used to be, and I doubt she will ever be the same person again. I'm thankful that I'm not the one who has to figure out how to live on my own without my kids because I made a stupid mistake that I shouldn't have. I'm sorry that your wife cheated on you with your son's school bus driver, and I can't imagine how she could not feel extreme guilt and shame for going behind your back and being with someone who plays such an important role in your child's life. I'm sorry you had to go through this real-life nightmare. It's never easy to recover from cheating, but just keep reminding yourself that you and your children deserve better. My 25-year-old male and my 24-year-old girlfriend, I met her 3 years ago at a party hosted by my fraternity. Admittedly, towards the end of my college life I was pretty wild. I felt like I had everything figured out, and during my last semester of school I got a bad case of senioritis. After college, we both got jobs, and about a year later we decided to move in together. We were both new to our fields and we worked as hard as we could. The job description she initially gave me didn't make me think she'd be staying up late at the office a lot, but I would get text messages from time to time that she wasn't coming home for dinner. I really trusted her, so I never felt like anything was happening. I believed everything she said, and when she told me she was working, it wasn't a couple months after she got promoted. She told me she had to go to a conference. She quickly backed off of that, and it hurt me that she rejected it so quickly, but she just told me that we couldn't afford to lose time. I quickly forgot about it, and I was just happy for her that she finally got to go. A few days before her business trip we had a little argument about our relationship. She was working late a lot and I didn't think she was being attentive enough, so I confronted her about it. I'm lucky to have family connections in my industry. I grew up in an upper-class family. I could afford to go to a good school. I'm a member of a fraternity, and I have a lot of connections thanks to my family. But she assured me that when she got back from her trip, we would talk more about it. I told myself that I was going to forget about it and let her enjoy her time there, and before she left, she told me that she would call me every night she was in California. The next day I waited by the phone for her, but she never contacted me. I texted her to ask her what happened, but she didn't get back to me until the morning. The next night, she never called me again, and I felt kind of stupid waiting by the phone for her to contact me. Eventually, I got an invite to a party a friend was throwing, so I went to that, and I didn't talk to her for the entire 5 days she was in California except for texting every now and then. In the short time she was gone, the distance between us seemed to triple. I tried to talk to her about it, but she just didn't want to. It's incredibly frustrating to deal with her when she makes little to no effort to communicate with anyone. I don't want to believe that she's cheating on me, but I have to at least rule it out. I didn't know how to ask her, so the first chance I got I went through her cell phone. When I typed in the word together, a lot of different messages came up, but I could read from the text snippets that someone had recently messaged her about wanting to get together. I didn't recognize the guy she was texting with, but I knew he was a coworker of hers, and apparently they had been sleeping together for a while. Apparently, she didn't want me to go to California with her because she was planning on spending the week with him. It all made sense why she hadn't been talking to me during that time. I know how hard she worked to get where she is today in her company, so I know how hard it would be for her to lose that. A few nights ago I played it cool and stopped pushing her to talk about the distance between us, and I just accepted it as it was. 8:30 p.m. knowing that this was basically her saying that she was going to be at the office late to go and sleep with this guy. I replied to her that it was okay and that I would put a dish in the microwave for her to warm up. So I figured if I could find the evidence I could show it to her boss. When I walked into the building it was almost empty except for a janitor. I had to lie and tell him I was an employee who forgot his keys. I got the owner's info through the company website and I contacted him. A couple of days later he contacted me and told me he wanted to see the evidence that I had mentioned. I brought it to his office in the middle of the workday. My girlfriend saw me walk in and showed him the evidence. Her boss just glared at her and asked if she could sit down and then kicked me out of the office. I stood outside the door for a while, listening to him dismiss her, and she stormed out and stood in front of me, completely shocked. I told her that I wanted her out of the apartment and she tried to pretend that it was her decision because she wanted to be with another man, and if that was true, why didn't she just leave me in the first place? We have a lot of college friends who tell me that she is actively looking for a job as well as doing insurance sales online, which as far as they know is definitely not what she planned to do. I will never understand why people pursue another person when they are in a relationship, especially if they really want to be with the other person. I hope you can forget about all of this and find someone who truly cherishes you and don't throw away your relationship. Good luck. Story 5. I realized that our family backgrounds were completely different. She had several siblings, her parents were always involved in her life and they all seemed to genuinely enjoy being with each other. I was welcomed into their family with open arms and I've never been happier than I am right now. Her youngest sister is 8 years younger than her and is probably one of the family members she is least close to due to the age difference. Her sister was going through a difficult time in her life when her longtime boyfriend was injured at work and couldn't go back. At first everything was fine. I enjoyed seeing my wife and her sister together. I could tell they were both happy to spend time together, and I enjoyed spending time with her boyfriend's friend, who is much younger than me, but we still had a lot in common. My sister-in-law got a job and her boyfriend didn't. My wife was a stay-at-home mom and it was the beginning of the school season, so she was home alone with him for 8 hours a day, and I could not have imagined that they would be sleeping together during that time. I asked my wife about it because she was the only man in the house and she laughed it off and told me it probably fell on the floor when she was doing laundry. A couple of weeks went by and nothing happened, and I started to think I was overreacting when I saw the underwear, but I smelled his cologne on the pillow and I slept on that pillow every night and I knew what it smelled like, and when I told my wife that it was another man's scent, she thought I was hallucinating. The next day I installed a nanny cam in her bedroom to see if I could get any footage of her in the ACT footage. When I saw this I had no intention of trying to reconcile our previous relationship, and frankly I wanted to hurt her the same way she hurt me. She was happy to be closer to her sister and I was going to ruin that. When I told her sister I knew it would ruin her relationship with her whole family, I didn't care. Her sister's boyfriend had been filing for disability benefits after the workplace accident, but I highly doubt that was fraudulent. I called the Social Security office to report him for suspected disability fraud and they told me they would investigate immediately. I texted my sister-in-law and told her we were going out to dinner and meeting at a restaurant where we were going to be away from other people. I showed her the evidence I had and I explained how I had suspected it for some time and then that I needed to get the evidence for myself. When I showed it to her she was in hysterics. She trusted her boyfriend with all her heart and she trusted her sister even more. When she calmed down we both went back to my house where I confronted my wife about what had happened, and my sister-in-law stood behind me sobbing. My sister-in-law stood behind me sobbing the whole time, which was totally inexcusable, and she couldn't even say anything except that it didn't mean anything. When I got home my wife was waiting for me and for some reason she went off on me claiming that I had no right to tell her sister about the affair I caught. She also said that I had illegally obtained footage of their affair and demanded that I give it to her. When I told her she practically begged me to forgive her. She didn't want a divorce because that would mean I wouldn't be there to support her anymore. In addition, I told her she had to make sure her new boyfriend left the house as well and that I was worried that if I had to see him I might attack him. A couple of weeks went by and my wife moved out of the house to go live with her aunt. The boyfriend ended up having to go back to work because the Social Security office deemed him fit to go back to work. I got a hateful voicemail from him complaining about how mean he thought I was for reporting him to the Social Security office. My wife and I ended up divorcing, and the funny thing is that I felt I knew her family better than she did and I didn't want my kids to leave their family, so I stayed in the same neighborhood and just changed houses. I'm sorry you have to go through this. It's upsetting that your wife and her sister's partner cheated on you. You should trust your family, and for your wife to completely ignore that she slept with her boyfriend is a very selfish act. I think you are right to tell your sister-in-law. It sounds like she works very hard to support her and her boyfriend's friend whilst her boyfriend cheats on her.